Welcome back. If you missed the last 2 episodes, we are in an 8-part series that I'm calling the Paralegal Survival Toolkit. If you haven't grabbed the PDF download that goes with this series, go do that now at paralegaltoolkit.com. And then after you listen to today's episode, go listen to the previous 2 episodes that are part of this series. You don't have to listen to them in order, but you will want to listen to all 8 of them. This one is part 3 of the series, and I'm calling it the courageous communication skill that saves paralegal careers. Yeah, that's a big one. And that's why I'm putting out an episode in a holiday week. I don't normally do that, but I wanted to get this one out to you. Plus, I thought maybe you need some listening material other than Christmas music. But I also wanted to be able to jump in here and tell you thank you for sticking around this year. It was a year when I wasn't putting out regular weekly episodes because of the time I was spending getting An AI launched and the new Rise course launched. I do have a couple of other big projects that I'll be working on in 2026, but this new series has me excited to get episodes out to you. Also, I have some great interviews that I'm going to be getting out to you as well. And I wanted to be able to get this whole series out, hopefully in a row. Depending on the timing of the interviews, I might interrupt this 8-part series with an interview or 2, but we'll see how that goes when January rolls around. This week's survival skill is all about the moment every paralegal inevitably faces. The moment when you're overwhelmed, behind, confused, or something is going off the rails and you're tempted to stay quiet because silence feels safer. But in the legal world, silence is the most expensive mistake a paralegal can make. I have to tell you a quick story to illustrate how expensive silence can be. I won't give you the numbers, but trust me, it was expensive. And how sometimes silence could even cost you your job if you're not careful. When I was a paralegal manager, I had 2 of my Atlanta paralegals working on a huge arbitration case that was going to be held in New York. This case involved a really big team and lots of money was at stake. I'll call the 2 paralegals Jack and Jill because I can't think of any other fake names at the moment, but let's just say Jack and Jill went up a hill from Atlanta to New York. I don't know. Anyways, they'd been prepping for the arbitration hearing for months. This arbitration was supposed to last anywhere from 8 to 10 weeks, all day, every day for 8 to 10 weeks. Throughout their prep time, I'd ask them if they needed any additional hands to help them out. Nope, we're fine. So then one day, a Thursday afternoon that I'll never forget, the partner on the case calls me from his cell phone. He's in New York, so we were all handling it from Atlanta. There were a couple of Atlanta partners, a couple of New York partners, associates all over the place, and then the 2 paralegals were out of the Atlanta office. But so they'd all left. They'd gone to New York City, to our New York office, and that's where they were prepping. That's where they had the war room set up. So he had called me from his cell phone, and he said that the arbitration was scheduled to start on Monday, and the scheduling order required both sides to submit their exhibit notebook binders to each other at least 24 hours, I think it was. Yeah, like 24 hours prior to being able to use any exhibit at the hearing. So you had to let the other side know, here's your exhibit binder for what we're using tomorrow. So it was quite different than how it works at a regular trial where you exchanged all the exhibits at once weeks before trial. Anyway, he says they're starting on Monday and the 2 lead partners have been asking the 2 paralegals if they can see Monday's exhibit binders because they're prepping for their opening statement and wanting to know when they're getting delivered to the other law firm. Technically, I guess they didn't have to be delivered until Sunday morning or maybe Saturday night. Anyways, they felt like they're getting vague answers to those questions for too long. He wants me to get on a plane and get to the New York City office. So I did. And when I walked into that war room, the 2 paralegals were sitting on the floor in piles of paper, boxes stacked to the ceilings and on tables, and they started crying. Not because I scared them, but because they knew they were in over their heads and they needed help. I won't get into the details of what went wrong and what didn't. I kind of talk about that a little bit in my litigation bootcamp because it's specific to litigation. The reason I wanted to tell you that story is an example of what not to do. You see, those two paralegals didn't want to admit to those partners that they were in over their head. They hadn't wanted to admit it to me the month before when I asked if they needed help. They kept thinking if they could just push through and work longer and harder, they'd finally get it done. I'm telling you guys, that almost never happens. That situation could have been avoided with one brave conversation, just 1 week earlier. Heck, even 4 to 5 days earlier would have helped. All right, so let me give you a couple of tips and then maybe some actionable strategies. So, tip number 1 is to know the cost of your silence. A lot of new paralegals believe that there's this myth that's going to get them in trouble, right? If I just work harder, stay later, keep pushing, I can fix it before anyone notices. But here's what nobody tells you early in your career. Silence is costly. Silence makes the problem bigger. And silence erodes trust before you even realize it. See, that's what happened with those two paralegals. They forever eroded the trust of working with those partners and those associates who knew what was going on in that arbitration case. It was detrimental to their careers. Tip number 2, don't let your silence blindside your attorneys. Attorneys can work with almost any challenge, tight deadlines, unexpected issues, shifting priorities. They can work with all of that as long as they know what's happening. What they can't work with is being blindsided. They want to trust you. They want to rely on you. They don't want to have to check in every day and make sure, look over your back and make sure you're doing everything right. They don't have the time for that. They want to be able to trust you. But trust is built through communication, especially when things are not going perfectly. And speaking up early doesn't make you look incompetent. In fact, I'd almost argue the opposite. It shows emotional intelligence, good judgment, professionalism, and that you understand the bigger picture. That's the kind of paralegal every attorney wants to keep. So here's what courageous communication looks like. I'm going to give you scripts of things to say. I'm going to give you at least 3 or 4. So here's one. I've run into a problem, and I want to make sure you know early so we can adjust if we need to. Number 2, I'm behind on the document review and want to walk through possible next steps with you. 3, I'm not sure I understand the assignment correctly. Can we confirm before I continue? And I'll throw in a 4th one here. This timeline is tighter than I realized. Can we prioritize the most critical pieces or talk about some of these issues I'm having? These are not admissions of failure. They're not saying, hey, I failed and I need your help. What they do is they prevent blown deadlines, they prevent mistakes, maybe client billing surprises, and they prevent fire drills that should have never been fire drills. So let's turn this into a simple framework for you. You know I love a good framework that's going to help you take away some actionable strategies. So step 1, identify the moment you need to speak up. What does that look like? Well, look for signs like you're behind and catching up isn't realistic, not on a normal 7 to 8 hour day. You're confused and you keep second guessing your work, which means maybe it's headed in the wrong direction, right? And then you're going to have to spend time fixing it. Or a task is larger or more complex than you expected, which I will tell you is normal, especially when you're early in your career and you haven't done those types of tasks or projects before. That's where you have to really pay attention. Or it could look like you're staying late trying to, quote, fix it quietly. Those are your early warning signals. Step 2 is to communicate early and concisely. You don't need a long story. You don't need to apologize repeatedly. Just state the issue, what you've done so far, and what you recommend next. Which brings me to step 3, which is, what do you recommend next? Okay, you want to bring a solution or two. You know I talk about problem-solving skills all the time on here. Here's another one. Attorneys love to work with paralegals who are problem solvers. So the way to not make it seem as bad when you're going to go talk about this thing that's come up, you're going to have this courageous conversation, then this will turn a tough conversation into a trust-building moment where you're actually bringing the problem. You're going to talk about you're going to state the issue. You're going to state what you've done so far, and then you're going to give a solution or a potential, maybe 2 different solutions. Examples might be, I can stay focused on this one piece if someone else can handle the binders. Or if we extend the review through Wednesday, then we can make sure we have time for QC so that we know it's accurate before it goes out to the other side. Or if I start with the key documents, we'll have those done what we need first, and then I can move on to the others that don't have those deadlines. Here's a message that I want every paralegal to hear. Your attorneys don't expect perfection. They expect communication. They just don't want to be blindsided. They hired you because they know that this work is complex. They know priorities collide. The same thing happens with them. And they also know things can go wrong because things go wrong for them too. What they can't work with is silence. You will never lose credibility by speaking up early, but you can lose credibility by waiting too long. So this week's survival skill is be brave enough to communicate before the problem becomes a crisis. I know it takes courage, but courage is a paralegal superpower, and you all have it. So the next one we're going to dive into is another survival skill that will help you become what I call the calm center of every chaotic file. So stay tuned. And remember, if you want to go deeper with these courageous communication skills we talked about today, or all of the real-world strategies that I've put in that Paralegal Survival Toolkit, you can grab the PDF at paralegaltoolkit.com or the link in the show notes. All right, I'll see you in part 4 of this series next week, assuming I can get it recorded in between the holidays, but I'm going to try. I promise I'll try. Until then, I hope that you are able to enjoy some time off for the holiday season, and you get to spend some time with family, friends, or even some alone time if that's what recharges you. All right, you've got this. I'll see you next week.